Good afternoon, everyone. Bella and I are going to be talking to you guys about our exhibit, In a New Kingdom Home, Exploring the Material Culture of the Traditionally Female Domestic Space. For our theme, we wanted to look at objects which would have typically been found in one of the homes at the workmen's village of Deir el-Medina, which is located in Thebes and which was occupied throughout the entire New Kingdom. Knowing that the home is a typically gendered female space, especially in ancient Egypt, we wanted to see what these objects could tell us specifically, if at all, about the female experience in the household.
The layout of our exhibit is informed by the layout of the typical house at Deir el-Medina. 12 objects was not enough material to fill a fully reconstructed home, so instead we decided to create areas of the exhibit that focused on one room or another, and only one or two aspects of life from that room. The path that the viewer is meant to follow is designed to walk them through the material in the order that it would have appeared as one ventured through the actual ancient house.
So in the first room in the house, this was where domestic religious practices occurred, and its section of the exhibit is therefore dedicated to household cult objects. The next room that the exhibit deals with is the bedroom. And there's two aspects of life which occur in the bedroom in which this exhibit deals with. The first is what we call a bed assemblage, but essentially what you would need to go to sleep in ancient Egypt. And the next section is when you wake up and what you need to get dressed and get ready for your day. The last section that our exhibit deals with is part of the room that is the kitchen. And this section showcases objects related to food storage.
The slide layout places our introductory panel, which you see here, at the very beginning of the exhibit. The panel grounds the viewer with a brief history of the workmen's village at Deir el-Medina, while also setting them up to explore the idea of domestic spaces and how it was traditionally gendered female. The introduction panel also includes a rendering of the house plan, which was used to inform the exhibition layout. This should help the viewers be able to picture the real space as they walk through the exhibit.
So as previously mentioned, the first section that our exhibit deals with is dedicated to household cult objects. So the section panel for this discusses the importance of household religion to the ancient Egyptians, how it's linked to ancestor and local deity worship, and how it was meant to help people through problems such as infertility, disease, and childbirth, all problems that women dealt with probably more, but would have still been important to men as well in keeping their families safe and protected. And so the first object in this section is an ancestor bust from Deir el-Medina, which is currently housed at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. You can see that it's a very good rendering of a human face, raised relief eyebrows, eyes, and a lot of color. It would have been inscribed with an individual's name, and it was meant to be identified with a recently deceased ancestor, which the family would have appealed to for help with problems like we just discussed, childbirth, death, and disease. And this bust would have worked in conjunction with the second object in this assemblage, which is not from the same tomb, but it's an offering table. It comes from the tomb of Ka at Deir el-Medina. And this table is where the individuals would have placed offerings for their ancestor. The bust would have been within a wall niche, and it would have acted as sort of a shrine in which the deceased Ka or spirit could have inhabited the bust, which looked like it and was identified as it. And so that was just another way for the individuals in the house to communicate with their ancestors for help.
The next section is all about the assemblage that would have been used to go to sleep. So the section panel here introduces the viewer to the most important objects concerning sleep, and it discusses the significance in ancient Egyptian culture of protecting oneself while asleep. The first object in this section is the bed of merit. It is currently housed at the Turin Museum. It is from the tomb of Ka. And this object was found piled with linens and with a wooden headrest. And so this would have actually been used in life, and the preservation is quite remarkable. And the most important part here is the lion's feet, which, even though we don't get into detail in the section labels about apopatreic features, is we do just touch on that slightly in the section panel, making sure that the viewer understands that the symbolism that was present in all of these objects used while sleeping were to protect the vulnerable self while asleep. This is just one of the blankets that was found on this bed, again, from the tomb of Ka, housed at the Turin Museum. And this blanket is pretty massive. It would be large enough to fit more than a twin-size bed today. And what's really interesting about this is you can see it has decorative fringe, but the fact that this was found not just alone, but with this spectacular bed with another blanket with piles and piles of linen, emphasize that Ka and Moritz would have had ample access to linen, which was a valuable resource, enough so that they were able to spare some to be buried for eternity. The final object in this assemblage is a funerary headrest from Deir el-Medina. It's made of limestone, and while the traditional headrest would have been made of wood, this was a funerary one made to be used in death, but it is designed to resemble a wooden headrest. We liked this one because it had the inscription, and it would have been painted bright blue, which has those associations with fertility and rebirth, and talking about the cradle shape of the headrest serving as part of that death and rebirth, sleeping and awakening process of the rising and setting sun.
The next section that the viewer comes to in this exhibit is the one about getting ready, which involves cosmetics, clothing, jewelry, everything you would need to go about your day. And so this section discusses how clothes and adornment were symbols of status and wealth, but it also talks about how they, some of these materials were possible means of protection, either as amulets in the case of jewelry, but makeup and clothing also had means of magical protection. The first one we come to is a comb. It's made of wood. It's currently housed in the Turin Museum, and it was found at Deir el-Medina. Many women were buried with these along with their wigs, but we do know that this comb was used in life, and many of these combs would have been used on women's real hair. We can tell from residual analysis. And the fine teeth of the comb would have helped women keep lice out of their hair and keep their hair clean, especially because many women, though some did shave their heads or keep their hair short, a lot of them did keep it long because it was a symbol of sexuality and fertility, and that was something really important to them. The next object is a cosmetic box, which has 4 interior compartments, which would have been used to house beauty utensils, oils and unguents. This one comes from the tomb of Sennacherib in Deir el-Medina, and it's very colorfully decorated. But I think the more important piece is that if you are someone who had enough cosmetics, oils, and unguents, which were not cheap, to have boxes and boxes of them, and there are more than just one box in this tomb, you were someone of importance, you had status, you had wealth, you could afford it. And so this box, it would have been used in life to house linen or other toiletries. We know it was definitely used in life because the funerary inscription that goes across the long sides was added afterwards, after the initial craftsmanship. And so it was buried with them while also serving them in life. It comes from the tomb of Ka, which is found in Deir el-Medina. And so kind of going back to what Bella previously talked about with linen, it was a commodity, and the more that you had of it, the more boxes of it you had, the more you were able to layer yourself in it. It was a way to express your wealth and your status. But we also know that tying with linen has some magical qualities as well. Lastly, we have this funerary pectoral, which comes from a tomb in Deir el-Medina. And while it is a funerary piece, the blue colors and the association with the goddess, either Nut or Isis, we're not sure, would have had ties to fertility and motherhood, and would have served an amuletic purpose both in death to help one be reborn, but also in life to help one remain fertile and get through childbirth safely.
The last section we discuss is of the last room in the house, which is concerning the kitchen or the hearth and the accompanying cellars, which would have stored food items for a while. This section panel discusses the materials, the construction, and the uses of different vessel types in ancient Egypt, including pottery and baskets. The first object in this section is a jar. It's made from Nile clay. It's housed at the Met Museum, and it comes from one of the workmen's huts near Deir el-Medina. And this thing is massive, and even though it doesn't tie in directly to something that might have been used in the home, it does emphasize that the production of food at the home to be transported out into the desert while the workmen were away working on the tombs as artists, that they needed to be able to store things for a long time and also be able to travel with it. Another vessel we have is, again, good for traveling. It's called a lentoid bottle or a pilgrim flask. It's housed at the Met Museum, and it comes from a house at Amarna. And so again, storage of food and liquid, being able to travel with it is very, very important to sustain the men while they're outside of the home. The final object here is a basket from Deir el-Medina. It's housed at the Turin Museum. And this basket is representative of the standard type of basket that would have been made in the home by the women for use by the women. It's not highly decorative, it's highly functional. It's a coil-made basket. And we have very limited survival of these types of baskets because they would have been used until they fell apart. And even then they were used for kindling. It is our hope that viewers will walk away from our exhibit with an understanding of ancient Egypt that encompasses much more than just the pharaohs. We hope that they can place themselves into the sandals of the everyday ancient Egyptian and consider what life would have been like, as well as developing an understanding of the gendered nature of domestic spaces. Overall, the takeaway should be that ancient Egyptians were people, and that there are some parts of the human experience that are and will always be universal.
Thank you so much for your attention. We look forward to your questions.
Yes, thank you.